Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here, bringing this conversation, very important, with David, Greg, and Rob. So I'm Paula Palermo. I'm co-founder at Impacta Finance, and we are building an intelligence layer on top of digital impact assets. And then I would love for you to intro yourself and what you're doing in ReFi.
I'm David Dow. I'm the co-founder of Gainforce, which is a decentralized monitoring platform opening up all the data of the environment, trying to make sure that impact is very transparently captured and tokenized, and basically building the data baseline infrastructure for anything you want to build on top of it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gregory. I'm one of the founders of Regen Network, and we're building a decentralized carbon and ecological asset registry system that's fused into a peer-to-peer marketplace. And you could sort of think of what we're doing as a multi-chain layer 2 specifically for governance of standards and asset origination.
Hey, my name is Robert. I'm one of the co-founders of Toucan. We've built a bridge for tokenizing carbon credits, and we've tokenized around 22 million tons of carbon credits and have an ecosystem around 100 plus builders using those carbon credits to build everything from marketplaces to currencies and all the things in between.
Oh. And then maybe we can kickstart with the true OG on ReFi. Greg, tell us a bit, what is ReFi? What is regenerative finance?
Well, to start, yeah, ReFi is not refinancing your home. So ReFi, regenerative finance, I think at its essence is coming from the perspective that finance and markets can be a force for good. And specifically, I think a lot of the community is very focused on how do we fund and finance public goods broadly, and specifically, how are we using the tools that we have available in Web3 to transform climate change into a more regenerative society. And so you have a lot of people thinking about carbon markets, you have a lot of people thinking about dynamic NFTs, you have a lot of people thinking about different forms of funding public goods. And together we all sort of self-identify as Regens, as part of the ReFi movement, and it's really turned into quite a meme. And the last thing I'll say before I pass it off is, you know, in case this all just sort of comes off as sort of a hand-wavy group of hippies doing a conjuring circle around, you know, good, I would invite everybody to consider that some pretty serious economic analysis shows that the most likely outcome is that climate finance broadly and the natural capital markets and what we might refer to as ReFi is probably set to become a multi-trillion-dollar per year industry, something on the order of the scale of the military-industrial complex. You sort of think today in civilization, humans pay something like $2 to $3 trillion per year for security, in quotes, and that's sort of the war machine or the war apparatus, and as well as intelligence and all of the things that go into that. Well, it turns out that internalizing, like security goes beyond just security of national borders and those sorts of things. Climate resilience and biodiversity and funding the sort of regenerating the relationship between humans and the rest of the world is actually security, it's resilience. And I think there's broad buy-in from pretty much everyone that needs to be internalized, those costs need to be internalized into our economy. The challenges with the previous attempts to this, previous to ReFi, like ESG and the SDGs, and is that it's very hand-wavy, right? And it's very hard to prove impact. So enter Web3, right? The ability to have a durable record of who is saying what about where, using what data, the ability to coordinate and govern those standards on chain as the base layer before we create these hyper-efficient markets is really what's transformational and exciting about ReFi. And everybody up on the stage is doing really fantastic work. So I'm going to pause and pass it back forward. I kind of, you know, if I was to tee it up, I'd go over to David briefly to talk about, because they're doing a lot of this work around the science, dynamic NFTs, some of the building blocks, I think.
Sure, David. I think you're a great case here because you're building on Solana, and then
Yeah.
I think it's a very nice example for us to chat a bit about Game Forest and the work you do with conservation communities.
Man, Solana is such a great chain, first of all, and a perfect chain for dynamic NFTs, transparency, measurements, and that's what underlies our protocol and our system. Gainforest really wants to, because when you talk about ReFi, when you talk about this emerging market of tokenizing common goods, making sure that people invest in what we see as probably potentially the biggest market failure in the traditional system, that we don't value nature, we don't value carbon. I mean, have you noticed how shitty our planet is right now? I mean, this is something, a big market failure that is because there's a lack of data of what impact is, how we can really trade it, how we can tokenize it. And Solana is great for that because we basically, our protocol captures impact at its most core. So we use satellite data, we use drone imagery, but we also allow people on the ground to collect measured trees. And these trees, for example, capture carbon. But they're also really great for the environment because they allow birds and other animals to flourish. And all of the data, we just tokenize and capture that. And people can create digital assets of that. For example, the most classical ones is carbon credits, where it's very clear that if we want to avoid a climate disaster, many companies need to go to net zero as fast as possible, and many need to use carbon credits in order to have this transition. So the demand comes there, and then using this transparent system of all the data layer being available here on Solana, also being represented in potentially really useful NFTs that dynamically update whenever data that is collected is changing, really, really secures your asset from any reputational risks. Because it's clear for you, you can just click on an asset, you see exactly the data, you see exactly transparency, you see exactly who collected the data and how things were calculated, and that is something that is lacking in the existing market. Because in the existing market, you have no idea when you donate to a conservation project, when you buy a carbon offset, what that is. You have no idea. Like there are recent studies where someone invested in a carbon credits project, and only like a couple percentage of the money you invested went to the project developers themselves. More than 60% went to a broker, and that's a reputational risk you're having as some institutional investor, and you don't have that risk when you're basically having everything transparently laid out in the blockchain.
Yeah, I think this is a great use case for blockchain technology as well, and when we're chatting about real assets on chain, because you actually use sensors and other type of device that can actually bring real information differently from other types of records, right? So I think this is a great example of what you do.
Yeah.
And also, Rob, I think that we can ask you about carbon markets, because also in the traditional market, when we are talking about green finance, carbon has a real value, has real market value, and on-chain as well. So we are seeing a lot of potential for this asset to be the leading ReFi digital asset, right? So tell us a bit on how is to work with carbon on-chain.
Yeah, so I mean, there's right now a fairly significant supply of carbon credits on-chain, and currently the trading volume of these carbon credits, last year at least, was, the vast majority of the entire market's trading volume was on-chain. So these are being very widely traded, they're highly liquid, and that means that you can, as someone who needs to offset your project, you can source credits in a much more efficient way. And kind of what was mentioned before about 60% of the funds from carbon credits going to brokers and middlemen, this can largely be circumvented by disintermediating the market. So by only having all of this be based on smart contracts that are largely automated and have very low fees, you can shrink that number significantly. So someone can, instead of going through a broker or multiple layers of brokers to buy these credits, they can just immediately access it on the market. So we've seen really quite an advanced market kind of emerge with multiple different types of marketplaces and multiple different types of ways to structure these kind of carbon products. And I think DeFi really has built a lot of very unique tooling. I mean, there's been a lot of like just tremendous innovation happening in the last 2 years, especially in DeFi, and a lot of that, the learnings from there can be tied into carbon markets and really make so that the carbon markets, which currently are really, really broken, like carbon markets right now that are off-chain, when you're buying carbon credits, you need to do like a paper contract, and it takes like multiple weeks to settle it. You need to involve lawyers. There's trust involved in that, and it's just quite crazy that this type of market is still operating with that type of technology stack. And we can bring this, using the state of the art of DeFi, we can really advance the market, make it much more efficient, and make it so that the funding that goes to through these carbon credits, it goes to actual projects, and that we have just a very efficient stack that can direct the funding towards those public goods.
And have you seen some DeFi instruments already using carbon credits? Or is this an invitation for all the builders here also to start thinking in this type of asset?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of. I think, there's the very early one, which was Klima, which was a fork of Olympus DAO. That was one big experiment, which didn't go that well, but I think really kind of showed what could be done. There's been lending markets. There's been people building like stable coins. I think there's different types of currencies that are backed by carbon. There's also carbon on multiple different types of exchanges. There's also multiple different types of marketplaces. So yeah, there's quite a lot of innovation that's happening there. But with that said, we're still very, very early. I mean, a lot of this innovation has been happening in the last year or so. And most of these projects that are building this, they started building in the last, let's say, half a year. And it just takes a bit of time to raise money, to create a team, to create a product. And so we're just still so extremely early. And I think there's going to be multiple decades of growth in this space ahead. And so I think as a builder, this is like the right time to start building. We've seen traction, we've seen validation. But there's just so much stuff to build. So yeah, I think it's definitely an invitation for anyone to explore building with tokenized carbon.
There is a very nice space. I'm so happy that we are full-time on this. And I love the topic of this chat because I'm from Brazil, and we have a lot of natural assets, but a very beautiful Degen crowd. So Greg, can you help us to understand the difference between Degens and Regens and how they can do some stuff together? If they can?
Yeah. So the journey from Degen to Regen, and maybe back again, I don't know. So, I mean, generally speaking, I think we could sort of say that maybe we use the idea that a Degen is looking to extract as much value or profit from a particular exchange as possible. And I think, a regen is looking to maximize in that interaction the amount of public good that's being generated by the interaction. And the question is, can we use applied cryptography, crypto economics, state machines, blockchain, smart contracts, in order to align those two incentives, whereby winning the game is providing the most public good, whereby reputation and profit are gleaned from most efficiently fixing climate change, really. So that's the journey from Degen to Regen. How do we, in Solana, mad props. We're building bridges to Solana, look forward to eco credits in Solana, super excited about Solana. And I come from a different corner of the crypto ecosystem, and from the outside looking in, my perception has always been that the culture of Solana is enormously pragmatic and just gets things done. There's an engineering problem, there's a challenge, community comes together and is cranking on it. Hacker houses, and there's so much direction and energy and focus. And I'm super excited about Solana sort of uptaking this quest from Degen to Regen and starting to engage with ReFi, because that the sets of primitives that are necessary and the reinvention of the game to really start applying all of that innovation to this question, it's very enlivening. First off, it's super fun. There's such an amazing design space, and it's just, really at the end of the day, it's going to take, I believe, Web3 really needs to actually step up and take leadership around a lot of these coordination issues, because I don't have a huge amount of hope that the traditional incumbent institutions are going to be capable of coordinating as effectively and iterating as rapidly. And so this isn't sort of like one chain or another, this is everybody iterating and innovating together that's really going to make ReFi a force for good in the world.
Wow, I love this. But do you think that we can have short-term returns or long-term returns at the same time? Because sometimes we feel that Degens and Regens, they might not be super happy together. Maybe David, what is your opinion about it?
I actually think, like, as much as we didn't let ourselves, the crypto community, constrain ourselves just to trade with fiat money, and we invented, basically Satoshi invented Bitcoin with artificial scarcity, right? Like the 21 million Bitcoins that created value. Region is just allowing us to trade with more assets, right? Not just like the traditional tokens, but like nature itself, carbon. Carbon actually one of the most scarce resources in the world, because that scarcity is not determined by a protocol, it's determined by physics. We have a certain kind of limit we are still allowed to like give out. So over the years, in the next 5 to 7 years actually, very, very critical period, that reaches this really physical limit of where our existence is potentially threatened. And if I don't see value in that, I mean, that's insane value that can be generated, that can be traded, can be like immediately copied, the same protocols we have in DeFi, but just use it, expand it on these new asset class that basically ReFi regions allow. So I see it more like a superset of assets that we allow ourselves to conceptualize and trade with. And you can immediately see the profit in that. So people already start buying a lot of, for example, carbon credits. People are slowly looking into biodiversity credits, right? Because biodiversity crisis, we talk a lot about the climate crisis. We have so many crises going on the Earth, so much like scarcity that's coming up now, so much value that we can emphasize and we can capture. For example, that if that trickles down immediately back, right? The blockchain-based system, for example, we conceptualize a method called measure to earn in Gainforce, where we allow local communities to capture, for example, their natural goods with pictures every couple of weeks. And that picture then translates directly into tokenized impact. And when we can sell that, they get back something, right? This is immediate impact from them for what they basically provide to the market. I believe there's many, many different ideas from DeFi inspired or even beyond that we haven't even conceptualized yet that can really accelerate not only the good for our human race, but also like the whole new asset class and making at the same time huge profit for the Solana community and beyond.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point. And as you brought the term of scarcity, I think also the word regeneration stands for having more positive outcomes and also externalities rather than negative externalities, right? So I'm also with some questions about if all the sector is built on scarcity because all the projects use scarcity and even fake scarcity to actually work. What about our regeneration efforts? So can we also have the same instruments, returns, and investment with regeneration? What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, and it's going to be a different, I think the realigning of short-term profits with long-term ecological health, or the realignment of short-term profits with provision of public goods, we see glimpses of how this can work with the sheer amount of open source innovation that Web3 is driving, right? So you have this economy, and the exhaust of that economy is a huge amount of computer science output, maybe an unprecedented amount of open source computer science output. So, I mean, to me, there's evidence, right, that we can actually align, we can say, we want to build an economy based on regeneration. And defining regeneration for me, ecological regeneration, what does that mean? What do I actually mean by that? What I mean by that is increasing the evolutionary capacity of our biosphere and the life living in the biosphere to maintain itself. Ecological integrity, ecological function, biodiversity, healthy carbon cycles. That's what I mean by regeneration, right? You measure that by net gain in soil carbon, or preservation of biodiversity, or net gain of above ground biomass in a reforestation effort, or whatever it may be. Each one of those, as David's been saying, you can gamify different layers of it. Right? So we can build a game around monitoring, measuring, and quantifying things. We can build a game around actually achieving the outcomes. We can link both of those to our understanding of atmospheric science and how much carbon needs to be sequestered. And we can link that stack up, and this is what Rob was inviting us to see. We can link that stack up to this composable, hyper-efficient set of market mechanisms. And again, this is where I start to get excited about the potential of the Solana community getting galvanized into this, because there really isn't, the efficiency of trading and frequency of trading possible on Solana is quite exciting, right? So you get, parlay all of that into sort of the efficient market hypothesis, and it's pretty exciting what could be accomplished as a coordination.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I would add another nuance of that. Capitalism has really created a lot of stuff. I mean, you can really, it really is a force to create change and to create things. And really, this movement, in my opinion, is about redirecting some of that change, not all of it. I mean, if 2 to 3% of all GDP goes towards regeneration, still, 98, 97% will go towards the normal stuff. But you could see, if we can gear capitalism to prioritize and really value some of these natural assets, then you can really create a lot of change in that area, because it is really an engine for change. It's an engine that created all the things we have around us. And so it's really just about fixing that, in my opinion, glitch we have right now. And I think this, we're creating the mechanisms to support that to happen. And this is the back end of that change.
Yeah, I see this happening right now with a lot of things, with the possibility to being built on top of those natural assets, right? And also, as we're talking about assets that have real value in the market, do you guys think there is a potential decorrelation opportunity for us to the whole crypto market and the cycles that we have with those natural assets with real value off-chain as well?
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think, not financial advice, right? But I do think you have physics. You have a limited amount of atmospheric carbon that our planet can absorb and maintain a biosphere conducive to current economic conditions, right? That's quantifiable. It's this amazing. It's not artificial scarcity at all. It's real scarcity. Okay, and then you have conditions whereby it's going to get, it's never going to be cheaper than it is right now to sequester that carbon out of the atmosphere, to capture it, and to, so we're going to have this scenario. It's sort of like the perfect conditions for us to point that capitalism gun, and there we go. So I think you have the conditions for regenerative assets, for ecological assets, yeah, essentially to decorrelate with a lot of the other markets and create sort of value accrual and stability. And the interesting thing, though, is will it really decorrelate? Because I think what's going to happen is it's going to be embedded in the market, and it's going to usher in a new phase of larger macro conditions if we manage to get that alignment, right? So in the end, maybe it doesn't really decorrelate, but the market is starting to correlate to a new mega trend or macro trend.
And to add on this, we see that trend already in the institutional market that has been these big carbon certificate providers and issuers, where they've been looking into using Web3 technology exactly for the same reasons we just mentioned, that it's too slow to get the job done with the existing technologies they have. Web3 is very fast, very transparent. This is exactly the lag they are facing. And also this huge urgency we have. We don't have a lot of time left in order to get these things fixed. So urgency, scarcity creates a lot of value, and that's perfectly suited for our community to fix it.
Yeah, we saw this happening with DeFi, right? And I hope this is also the space for us to do this in ReFi as well. Fixing those markets, creating new spaces and opportunities that was never there. So I think this is the right moment for it, right?
And because we have a couple seconds left, we all organize a ReFi side event right after this.
Exactly.
The first Solana ReFi side event. Super excited for you guys to come. Yeah, we have 150 spots, first come, first serve. So we have 220 booked. So just letting you know, but happy to continue that conversation, right?
Yeah, sure. I think everyone here is available as well for any questions you might have afterwards, or also curiosities on how we could integrate Degens and regions together. I think this will be fun. It's
Yeah,
already
but
been
unfortunately,
fun.
none of us will be available right afterwards to jam as much as I want to, because we have to hustle over to the event that got scheduled. Magically, this talk was scheduled with like 5 minutes to spare. So we have to
That's
go.
the sense of urgency.
There's a sense of urgency,
Yes.
yeah. But come with us over there, and then let's jam.
Planetary regeneration is urgent. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, everyone. We are all available here, Region Networking, Forest, and also Token Protocol. I hope we can build nice stuff together.